Welcome to the Content Creators Guide. This is a place where we expand our knowledge on what it takes to be successful in an ever-expanding world of content creation. Join me as I sit down with individuals sharing their success stories and tips that help them get over the hurdles they faced on their journey to creation success. All right, let's create. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Content Creators Guide. I will be your host, Patrick Conway, also known in other circles as Jaxus. Today, I will be talking to one of the hosts of the Fallout feed with around 400 episodes and is quickly closing on 500,000 downloads. My guest, is part of the ASA Podcasting Network, which has raised over $20,000 for did I say that right? Cystic fibrosis?
I'm throwing all kinds of things at you. I'm happy to guest tonight.
Okay, I'm glad you're questing. $20,000 for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in their annual fundraiser. My guest not only co-hosts many other podcasts like Dames Who Game, she is also the facilitator for the United Wastelanders Network, which is a mid-sized streaming group with multiple streamers. She is also an aspiring virtual photographer. I'm kind of interested in that because I have no idea really what that is, but her work has been featured in many showcases, including the Photo Mode magazine. Please welcome my guest, the eternally busy Jessica Starr. Hello, Jessica.
Happy to be here, Jaxus. Greets. How are you doing tonight?
Well, other than me,
you put a lot of words in there. I think you handled them pretty well.
Oh, well, it's just how it is. I want to make sure that I introduce my guests properly. I want everybody to know that you do a lot of stuff, but there is one thing I do, and that is cut things quick and get right into the questions. I want to ask you, most importantly, right off the bat, what got you into content creation in the first place?
Oh, well, let's just say love of games.
How about games? I like that one.
Love of video games. I mean, specifically Bethesda games, as you know from a lot of what I do, but love of games in general. I mean, it's funny because the more content you create around games, the less you actually get to play of those games in some cases. But I absolutely adore it. So, it's as a fan of a game, you want to talk to other fans about it. And then you talk to people more and more, maybe on forums, maybe online. Then you start doing a couple of videos. Then you maybe start a podcast, all about that. And it snowballs after a while.
Yeah, it kind of gets a little crazy if you don't keep a handle on things.
That it can. You have to learn to say no sometimes to different things that come up that you are really interested in. You have to tell yourself, no, maybe I shouldn't start, a fifth project that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I totally understand that one. I've kind of spread myself thin a few times. I've had to back off on a few projects, but I always have them in the back of my head, and I always want to go back to them.
Exactly. Kind of like a puzzle in a game. Just let it percolate a bit, and then when it's actually ready, it'll come out.
Right, exactly. When you first got started, what were some of the hardest hurdles you faced, and how did you get around those?
Well, I would say, as I was saying, I started mostly as a podcaster, contributing to podcasts over time, sending stuff in, a lot of listening, communication, and then eventually started hosting. And the hardest hurdle was perhaps hearing yourself regularly, understanding that sometimes you're not going to word things perfectly. In a video, you can actually, step by step, script it out, take your time, edit, and all that. In a podcast, there's a little bit of editing, as long as you're the editor. Because when you're not the editor, you have to live with your mistakes. And then, of course, going into streaming, it's just out there. It's just out there. Somebody might clip it. You never know what's going to happen. So yeah, I would say getting used to just going with the flow and hearing yourself are two of the biggest hurdles.
Yeah, I actually started out with live radio. So I never really had to edit back in the day. I was a internet radio DJ or, personality, whatever you want to call it. But what we did is we played music. We had a website with a little chat room where people would talk and they would leave, but it was live. So if you screwed up, you screwed up. Oh, well.
Beautiful. Hey, did you ever do Winamp radio? I had a Winamp radio station back in the day too, like the mid 2000s.
Mine was through Shoutcast and Livecast.
Yeah.
I used the Shoutcast plugin. Yeah, I used the Sam's Broadcaster. Yes, back in the day.
Beautiful.
That was some good times. That was 20 some odd years ago.
Yeah, it was close to that for me. Like, I don't really think of that as content creation. I did, for instance, college radio. I would go in and do a guest spot on that. I didn't have a regular show, but I went in and did a lot of guesting on college radio in my local town. And then Winamp, that was a big thing. So I had a radio station in The Sims Online. It's funny, bringing me back. I only thought of this like once in the last couple of years. And we had built a coffee house and we had people come by. We would do poetry slams and stuff in the game. And then we had a radio station that people could tune into to hear various songs and music while they're playing. And there was a forum and everything. It was a big thing back in the day.
Internet radio was quite large at one point. And then I don't know, man. I felt like the passion was kind of leaving me. As I got tired of doing the hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Climax Radio, that was the radio station I worked with for quite some time, was Climax Radio. And, we were just a bunch of goofballs. And at some point I used to do like prank phone calls. I would call people and pretend to be somebody else. I called the KKK.
That whole morning host thing?
Yeah, well, I do things like I called the KKK once and pretended to be a black family down the street and trying to get them to help me move a couch. That kind
of thing. Goodness. Okay.
Yeah. Well, whatever worked, and it was good entertainment at the time. But how that would grow over today, who knows? When you got into doing podcasting and stuff like that, what kind of like microphone do you like to use? I mean, obviously you got a nice microphone looking there. What did you use when you started?
Oh, wow. So that's a great question, because I was a headset podcaster when I first started, like so many. Oh yeah, beautiful Sound Blaster headset. It was promoted by some streamer. I don't even remember who it was at the time. This is back like 2015, 2016. And yeah. So just a headset. Then I moved on to a nice blue microphone. Snowball's always a good one.
That was my first podcasting microphone, was the Snowball. It looks like a big softball.
Yeah, it's got a nice tight pattern. I really like the sound of it. It's mellow. And at this point, I have a HyperX microphone, which I love. They actually are one of the sponsors of Elgato Pub. They do affiliate stuff with us. And so, sometimes we get discounts and stuff on Fat Loot, and I happen to get a HyperX microphone.
I think it's really, now mind you, I know it has nothing to do with sound quality, but I do like the little LED element to the microphone. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a great mic, and I can control it as far as that goes. Now, keep in mind, this is more of a streaming mic than a podcasting mic. I use it for podcasting, although sometimes I'll pull out one of the others I have. But it's a dynamic mic. I mean, no, it's not a dynamic. It's a condenser mic, not a dynamic mic. So therefore, it picks up a little bit more. I've got to keep a filter on it, keep an IQ and all that.
So, I mean, how do you control the sound? I mean, obviously, you just keep it very quiet in your room, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. Keep the fans down. I actually do have eggshells up between my PC and myself. If I'm doing, for instance, I'm doing some serious voice recording for, say, a podcast intro or something that's got to be really pristine. I actually set up, I've got a couple of large pillows that go right here beside the monitor, and I'm in my little sound booth.
I kind of do something similar when I'm doing voice acting. So, yeah, because I do some voice acting for certain other shows, and it was like, now mind you, with this
you've jumped in with me. You've been on Modus Files as well.
Yes. Yeah. I played Beckett. And then the thing is when I first started, I had the Snowball. So I had to kind of box myself in, like you were saying. But as soon as I got the Shure mic, it was like, I kind of don't have to worry about it anymore, because like you can't hear my fans. I could put on another fan. This thing is so, unidirectional. It's just boom, right to my face.
A good dynamic mic is a great way to go for general speech if you're doing a podcast or voiceover, anything like that. Yeah, the majority of podcasters I know use some version of it. Even, let's be honest, an SM58 is just fine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so crisp and clear, and it's no work now. I feel like I worked a lot with my Snowball, because I had to have an equalizer set up on the actual background, in the computer, and I would tweak it here and there and kind of get the right sound I was going for. This thing, I just plug it in, turn it on, and it really goes. What do you like to use for your editing?
Oh, well, it really depends on what I'm editing. If we're talking podcast editing, I'm a big fan of Sony, now Magic's products. SoundForge is a classic. I don't know if you've ever used any of the Sony mastering suite. They used to use Acid. A lot of people know Sony Vegas, the video editing, and SoundForge, which is the mastering tool, which is also great for just general wave editing. And now they're owned by Magix. Sony sold a lot of that off, but I still use their tools. So big fan of those, SoundForge and Vegas. For video editing, I actually really like Filmora and Movavi, which are two kind of off the shelf, kind of iMovie equivalents. They're not as powerful as Premiere, which I do have Premiere, but I don't love it as much unless I'm doing something that needs transparent graphics. So video editing, I do a lot in Filmora and Movavi.
I've never tried any of those, to be honest with you. I've used DaVinci Resolve as the
Yep.
main
Resolve
video
is
editing.
super powerful, super powerful. I like the fusion stuff and the way that works.
It just seems really simple to use too. Like, I mean, because I had to teach myself. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I just turned it on and started messing with it. And turned out it was fairly simple to get started with. Is to go watch a few videos and I was able to go. I think that's why I kind of went with it because I was like, at first Adobe like Photoshop and stuff like that. And, I get lost in there. It's too many buttons, just too much stuff going on in there.
I hear you there. Although for
Yeah.
photo editing, I use a lot of Photoshop. I'm definitely a Photoshop girl. That's what I've been using forever, and I love it.
So as a co-host, when you're now you do a lot of hosting, but as a co-host, I'm kind of curious, like, what is it that you think is the important part of being a co-host?
Keeping the conversation moving, being aware of the topic and the flow of where things are going, helping out with segues when necessary, But really, as a host, it kind of depends on the content and what you do. So, I'm one of the hosts on the Fallout feed. Sometimes, that's primary host. Normally, it's kind of what we would call a co-host role, but it's mutual hosting. And so I'm aware of the schedule. We do a lot of show notes, kind of keep things moving, know the segue. As a co-host on a stream, for instance, it's great to point out things that, when you're streaming, there's so much to focus on. You're watching buttons. You're maybe if you're in a game, you're controlling the game. You've got chat happening. So I feel the role of a co-host in anything live like that is to be watching chat, is to be aware of all the variables that the host may not be able to see. Call that out, bring attention to it, and keep it flowing.
Yeah, yes, I don't do very much streaming, which we talked about earlier, and it's like I could just imagine, like, for me, it's like, especially by myself, I kind of get lost in the game and I don't like, it's hard for me to focus on that chat room. I guess having a co-host or somebody with you or with myself, I've tried to have somebody on there, but they get bored. They're like, thanks for having me, bro, but I got to go do things.
That's kind of what mods are for as well. If you find you stream regularly, your mods will often serve a lot of those duties. They may or may not be in voice with you. You know what I mean? A lot of times the mods are just in the chat, but they can recognize those things pointed out and they know when to tag you when you see in your eyes focusing, like, oh, they pointed this out and here's the thing I need to know. So mods do that too. But on a stream, a co-host, a little bit of both, but it really does help the flow. They can ask questions. It's funny because on our show Fallout Feed, you mentioned the primary goal of a co-host is often to ask questions too and be an audience surrogate to kind of keep things going. But the way we do the feed, Andrew, as the main host, is the one who is the audience surrogate. He might introduce stuff. We get talking, but he loves to, have subject matter experts on. I mean, we've got us, but then other people are knowledgeable at different things in the game. And he will just ask questions, keep it going, kind of play the everyman who doesn't know as much about the game, even though he does. But he likes to say he's forgetful and encouraging, communication to go. But a lot of times a co-host will fill that role too.
Excellent. And then so I noticed you got quite the light setup there, and I was like looking at the backgrounds and stuff like that. How important is that, especially for podcasting? I guess it doesn't matter as much but unless we do video, then having just a talking head can get a little boring. But having that ability to be able to change up the mood,
going a little wild here for you.
How does that work for you in the streaming element? How important do you think that is to have that ability to? Now, mind you, if anybody's ever taken psychology, reds, blues, and greens, they all have effects on our mood and how we feel and how we react to things. So I'm seeing this as a positive and important role in streaming, I think, to keep kind of the vibe or the feel going.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, we know about color theory, the way green affects people, the way blue makes people more open and welcoming, the way purple, which I love, can add a little bit of like mystery or romance or whatever. That's great. The way red can add some rage. Like that is there, but I don't think that that's a super important component because a lot of times when you're streaming, unless you're doing a just chatting stream or what have you, and you're kind of small in the corner. So it has a little bit of a vibe around you, but it's a little more atmosphere than anything else.
Okay. I was a little curious because I don't Like I said, I don't stream very much. Now it's like, so for instance, if you're a musician or whatnot, that would play a bigger role than it does when you're a gaming
It
Twitch
very
streamer.
much does. And
Yeah.
it can with gaming too. In fact, you can even hook sometimes lights in with Discord and such so that things change with the Discord hears the music or, the beats of what's happening. Things get frenetic and the action gets loud. It turns very orange and red, stuff like
Oh
that. I've
yeah,
done that
that
with
would
my
be
keyboard
neat.
before. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I could see how you turn it almost into an EQ. Have an effect with the equalization of
Yeah.
the sound. That would be
But
neat.
I find it maybe most important when if you're recording a video, you're doing a kind of face-to-face chat with somebody like this in a podcast kind of scenario.
Right.
That's when I think it becomes even more important.
Well, I do enjoy it. I like watching it.
I should have let you pick the color ahead. That's something we let people do occasionally. What color do you want to have tonight?
I like it changing all the time. I don't know. I'd be happy with Christmas lights blinking in the background.
I have those two. They're off right now.
Oh. I'm going to take a minute to say thank you to all the people who are listening to the show, and thank you to all my patron listeners for your support. If you have not yet and would like to, please like, follow, subscribe, write me a review so they can find me on the internet. I'm not lost in the dingy world of the abyss. And then you can also send me an email if you have any comments or questions at ccreatorsguide@gmail.com, or you can follow us at at ccreatorsguide on Twitter. I actually got that out of my mouth. Anyway, we'll be right back after this message and a short clip from today's talent.
I'm your host, Maverick Stone.
It's me, Gingerino42.
I'm Romer.
Hey, this is Sassy Lady.
And I'm Jaxus, and we are the Fallout Roundtable. Join us as we explore various topics from the Fallout universe brought from multiple perspectives. We can be found on your favorite podcatchers from Spotify to iTunes, or follow us on Twitter at FalloutRTB or our email falloutrtb@gmail.com. Be sure to rate, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the break. Coming up next, we're going to go ahead and play the clip.
Tiny booty? Yeah, no. I mean, Rudy Tooty, fresh and foodie. I could go down on that booty, but I agree. That's not an appropriate name for her. And I didn't say what I just said, okay? But, Daguerre.
You damn right I'm your daddy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anyway, we're heading out. What does she want us to do next?
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the clip, and we're going to get right back into the show. So, how did you, come up with, is Jessica Star your actual name, or did you have to come up with that? Maybe Jessica's your real name and Star is just something you added as kind of a
That's
thing?
my name.
Really?
Jessica Star. My parents were hippies.
What a cool name.
There's a hyphen in there and everything. People often leave it out and put Jessica Space Star. No, Jessica Star. That's my name.
Jessica Space Star. That sounds even weirder.
Oh, wow. I'm a space star? That would
Space
be
Star.
awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So have you been part of any of the creative elements of coming up with the names for your shows?
Yes, to an extent. Fallout Feed was established before I joined. So Fallout Feed, we've been around for about 7.5 years. And I joined about 3 years in. So it started before Fallout 4. And, they were doing the round table and stuff about various, different playthroughs of the game. And then, I would jump in on that and send in some feedback for the round table and such. And then with the launch of 76 coming out, I got into the stress test and I started sending information on, the stress test and the beta was happening there. And after a little bit became a permanent host on the show.
So what do you think is important when coming up with a name for a show?
Well, okay. It has to be evocative, but also to the point. I think that's very important because if you get too esoteric, if people don't know what the heck a show is about, then the name serves very little purpose. It is in some way while still standing out. If you don't put it in the title, they're not going to find it. If you have a show that is, Wandering the Wasteland, people probably won't find that. But if you have Wandering the Wasteland, talking about Fallout. Okay, there's the keyword. We got that keyword in there. We got the SEO. That's even more true for videos and such. But even with podcasts, people hop into their podcasting, and if they're not looking for you in particular, they're going to put in a few of their favorite things. Man, I need a new podcast. I would like to hear about Dragon Age. Well, maybe I'm going to type Dragon Age in. I'm not going to type in, whatever odd, obscure thing you used as a reference. So please, please put that in there.
Keep it simple. Yep, I believe in the KISS method.
Yeah, well, you're part of Robots Radio Network with the, in the Rocket Club with the Fallout Roundtable that you do. And, that's something that Robots always says.
Yeah, keep it simple. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Always keep it simple and make sure you show the value. That's something I've always found very important, is making sure you show the value. What do you think is a question new content creators fail to ask? And what would the answer to that question be?
A lot of times they fail to ask, who's my audience? That is, if they want to grow and they want to succeed. You mentioned Content Creators Guide, and content creators will recognize that. That's important. That's your audience. When a lot of us start podcasting or doing videos, it's because out of the passion for like games or projects, something we have that we want to share. That's great. Make what you want to make. That's super important. You have passion for what you're doing. However, who is interested and what will they want to get when they click on a video to watch? Now, are you speaking to someone exactly like you? Great. Okay, say, okay, I'm making this for someone like me who really enjoys this thing, but they've got a lot of options. So think about it deeper. Okay, I'm making something from someone who really likes this thing, but also wants to know more about camp building in Fallout. So make sure you tailor that to that. Know your audience. You know what I mean? Or if they're playing games, like they would really like to know the most effective or efficient way to level up, to grind this out, to collect everything they need to be able to have a good time if they only get to play twice a week on Saturday, twice a week on weekends. Stuff like that is very important. So narrow that down. And I think people fail to ask that for their first 5, 10, 20, 50 videos sometimes.
Well, I do notice that, like, so when I'm talking to somebody that's new to content creation, and a lot of the times they're like, oh, well, I want to be kind of like a variety show. And I hear that so often, and I'm like, guys, so you're not Joe Rogan. You can't, it's not going to go. I mean, who knows who Jaxus is? A handful of people.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to call it the Jaxus show and just talk about whatever.
If you have a show called Jaxus and Sassy Present, that would be fantastic. People who know you would be like, oh, I'd like to hear Jaxus and Sassy talking about things. But
Right.
for anyone else, it's far too generic. And so I host my podcast currently on Buzzsprout, is who our current host is for several of the shows. And there's a group there. And it's so funny how often people come in and they're sharing their new show. And you just look at it, you're like, what is that about? Going back to names.
Exactly. You got to know what it's about. And yeah, so you if you hear, this so-and-so show, Bob Newhart show or whatever, you automatically know that this is being revolved around that particular individual. And how do you get the buy-in from that individual? Now, if you're really searching for something, you might come across them. But if you see somebody's name and you don't recognize it and it's their show, you're probably just going to skip right on by.
Yeah, if you center content on yourself, that's valid. And over time, you may have a little more name recognition. But, once again, who's your audience? If your audience is yourself, you might care a lot about you. but maybe try to understand what else people are looking for. That's advice that I would give. At the same time, we make content for us. I know what I would need to do to grow my YouTube channel a lot more. I absolutely know the kind of content I should make. I know the videos that are most successful, taking a look at how things show up in search and what's done. But that may not be what I'm in the mood to make. Or in the case, if you are a kind of jack of all trades, do a few too many things, like we've talked about doing in some cases, you don't narrow down and focus on that. So, it's a choice. It's a balance. So I mentioned YouTube. So I do the YouTube. I do virtual photography, stream, and podcast. Each of those things takes a certain amount of time per week. Some of them go to the side because of that. You got to find that work-life balance. Plus, let's be honest, most of us have full-time jobs as well. It's not like we're making a living at this, supplemental at best. And so in choosing to do something,
all be Tom.
something with a weekly grind. Well, and Tom has that weekly grind, but it's very much for several of those shows. And then
he does many
the
podcasts,
Patreon.
So yeah.
And so if you're a streamer, that weekly thing of I have to do this day, this, that day, this, that day. And not only are you there for those, 2-4 hours, however long it is, but you're doing prep for that stream. You're making plans, you're getting guests, you're doing all that. It takes a lot of time. So that means probably your YouTube videos are going to slide to the side, like they have in my case, various things like that.
So being a YouTuber, this is a good question I'd like to ask is, how important do you find the shorts for your YouTube content? Have you utilized that or?
I've done a few shorts. They can get a really good reaction, especially at first. There is some debate as to whether or not shorts to direct people to your channel are a good or bad thing. In most cases, what I have actually found, and people who do a lot more YouTube than I do have found, seems to be that shorts need to exist separately. You're not making shorts to get people to your channel unless it's specifically on the same kind of content that you do on your long form video.
Mhm.
And creating shorts specifically to say, hey, I have a video coming soon, you should watch it. Death. Do not do that. Shorts are not there to advertise your main channel. Shorts need to be their own thing. So just like if you're doing a 2-3 hour stream and you've got a 30-second clip from the VOD that you spread around, that's fine. If the funny thing in that length of time can advertise the big thing, that's great, but that shouldn't be its purpose. It should exist on its own. So yeah, shorts are cute. They're fun. They're going to be monetized more soon. The monetization, limit on shorts is going to be ridiculous. The number of views things need, but they're
Right.
hoping they pop off, like TikTok and like Reels. So we'll see.
Okay, so the advice is basically don't use them as a commercial for your show. Use them as
Right.
their own thing and have fun with it, sounds like.
Have fun with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Sprinkle them out and understand they might exist separately. You might have a shorts audience that is different from your long form audience. Don't expect them to intermingle. It'd be nice if they do. And if you do enough of them over a period of time, they probably will. But certainly at first, they will not. They're separate things.
That's good sound advice. Thank you. So what do you got coming up next and how can people reach you?
Well, streaming regularly. So let's
What's
see.
your
Big
what's your
things.
stream hours?
Well, I normally stream Tuesdays and Thursdays on United Wastelanders Network. It's funny because we're a network of people with different streamers have different shows. At this point, I mean, I run it, and there are 6 of us right now. So we do alternating shows on Tuesdays, where sometimes Hat and Twiggy will do the daily grind, which is basically about grinding challenges and stuff in Fallout 76.
Mhm.
Charo Miami and her crew there, the WTF crew, will do a show called WTF, which is stunts, dares, and challenges in Fallout 76. And then the rest of the time, it's me. I do Wasteland Retro, where I'm playing some of the older Fallout games. Fallout. Right now, I'm playing Fallout 1 or 4.
I actually went back and played Fallout 1 for a while. I got to the point where I had made it around the map, did
Mhm.
the circle, and I didn't quite get the chip yet. I was like working around. Like I tried to avoid the chip because I thought if I did the chip, it would end the game, but apparently that's not the case.
No,
Um,
you have to get it in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like trying to avoid the chip so I could go check out everything, and I was like exploring through Necropolis, and actually that's kind of
Where you're going to
where I
find things.
yeah, exactly. So I went through there, and then I got to the point where I was just about to go ahead and I think I was going to help the ghouls there handle their business with the things you got to find, and I kind of got lost in the game, and I was like, I'm gonna go check out something else now. And then I got
Yeah, that happens. That happens.
well,
but
it's kind of a hard sell, man, because mind you, the story is really good. I mean, it's got a really in-depth storyline. It's just the gameplay is a bit old and it's hard to hold your interest.
yeah, I was still a gamer in the 90s, came up through all that, but it is hard going back sometimes. So
Yeah.
because we just had Fallout's 25th anniversary, I felt it was important. My gamer resolution was to play Fallout 1 this year. And so we're doing it as our current season 13 roundtable, where we're going through and doing the quests, every couple weeks and talking through it.
Mhm.
And so that's going really well.
Oh,
Really fun. We're a good, 8 to 10 hours into the game at this point for a lot of us. And yeah, that's super fun. But so that's what I have coming up next is just regular streams, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And obviously a lot of Fallout for Hope stuff happening right now. We've got a huge parade coming up on Sunday, and that's going to be awesome fun. All kinds of events at Gato Pub at United Wastelanders Network. And then the podcasting throughout. We're not even taking a holiday break this year, Jaxus.
Oh, by the way, for those that don't know, the Fallout for Hope is a charity event that's held by Kenneth Vigu, who is the main podcaster. He created the Chad Fallout 76 podcast, which is a very successful show. And he has raised is it almost 500,000 or is it over 500,000 now? I'm not sure, but he's raised quite a bit of money for Alzheimer's disease. St.
Fallout for
Jude's
Hope
Hospital.
had broken 250,000 earlier this year, and so at this point they are on their way getting higher there. Not to 500,000 yet, no.
No, not quite there. Okay, but just great work for St. Jude, Alzheimer's. They did an Alzheimer's thing that was really, really great. And then they were also doing stuff to help people in Ukraine. A lot of the
And that's for
yeah,
Project Hope.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Did a lot of fundraising for that last spring.
Right.
And, Ken tries to divide it out. So focusing on the St. Jude and then the Alzheimer's, like you mentioned.
Right.
Then we also had the Austin when they had a lot of power loss and catastrophe in Austin late last
Oh,
winter.
I missed
We
that
jumped in
one.
on that,
Yeah.
did a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a blanket Fallout charity. That this year we have over 500 streamers involved. Well, 500 streamers and content creators on YouTube and various things. The first year we did it was just 1 week, and he jumped in thinking I'd hit, maybe 10, 20,000. And of course, it broke 100.
Yeah.
Then last year, even more. And it's been great. I've gotten to do a lot of the main stage events and work on some of the planning for that. And it's just been really rewarding to be part of.
Yeah. No, I think it's an absolutely wonderful thing. And I wanted to make sure that we put a little highlight on that. I interviewed Kenny a little while back, and we talked about it quite a bit on there.
Good.
So my next question is, what key takeaway would you like the listeners to get from your time here today?
Hopefully that if you have a passion and interest in content creation, you can do it. Maybe start small with one thing you just really enjoy and work your way up and in. Maybe you've got an idea for a big project and you just need to buckle down and do it. But it's funny. I was talking with some of the guys from Nukipedia the other day, and really I say getting started is one of the hardest parts. It's important to just step in, just jump in and do it. That can be the real threshold, the real hurdle. Yes, consistency is important once you get going, but before that, you have to start in the first place to be consistent. Because if you're waiting till that perfect time when you're going to get 7 episodes, 10 episodes, you can definitely do it in a row. If you wait till that point, you may not get started. So I hope they take away that anyone can do it. Anyone can create content. Anyone can learn the tools. Just get started, do with what you enjoy. And if you, obviously it takes work to get better at it.
It takes a lot of work. It takes
a lot of work to do in the first place. It also takes a lot of work to improve, to know what your audience is looking for, to find that audience, to hone your craft, to get better at speaking, at covering topics, increase your own knowledge base. I mean, as a streamer or content creator, if you don't have a thing that you want or need to share, your content probably won't be compelling. So, as a co-host or color commentary, etc., you and I, we work on, trying to be a little bit amusing. We've got some humor, some wit. I'm known for dad jokes, but very quick-witted dad jokes. So, it happens. But
my dad
really,
jokes are terrible ones.
Mine have been known to cause groaning, but it's worth it. Sometimes you got to use a little bit of scattershot to get one direct hit. It's okay. But because people remember the direct hit a lot more than they'll remember the misses, unless you miss too often. But beyond that, I was talking about the center passion. So having that center passion and a thing that you're good at, the most important thing is to find that. So, I talk about humor and wit, but really, is there at the core something you want to share? And in my case, it tends to be general games knowledge and specifically Bethesda game knowledge and lore. If I wasn't a bit of incredibly nerdy about Fallout stuff and about Elder Scrolls stuff and about gaming in general, where I've played so many games, I've taken all the content and I generally remember it pretty well. I don't know that people will come back. People trust me as a bit of an authority, and they do that because of the knowledge base that's there too. So humor helps, being a really polished presenter or having charisma helps if you can. I don't know that I do, but I try. But having a real base to speak from is super important. Or maybe your passion is that you're super skilled at something, whether it's fragging fools or making videos. Are you an awesome editor with all the best cuts? I mean, that's great. Lean into what you're good at. And in my case, it tends to be actually lore and game knowledge more than anything else.
So I was about to get to the end of my show, but I forgot to ask. I wanted to touch on virtual photography. I'm kind of curious as to so what is virtual photography? So
back in the day, we just called them screenshots. I'm taking pictures and screenshots in games. Early in the day, we would do it just because we were photographing our high score on a Super Nintendo game on the TV to send a Nintendo Power. But no, these days, virtual photography is using either in-game tools or outside tools to capture photography and shots in-game. And then taking them, essentially all the needs or purpose of regular photography but done in a virtual world, hence virtual photography. Because yes, the
Okay.
designers are creating everything that you see there, but still the angle of the sun, the framing of the picture, all that is up to you as a photographer. If they're building these worlds for us to exist in, documenting them and making art out of them is actually our purview. So that's what digital photography is. And, a really good machinima creator can do that with their shots and their edits and all that. Virtual photography is obviously just a photograph of a scene,
Like
but
the
it's come up
5.0.
a bit. There you go. They did great
Okay.
machinima.
Yeah. When you
And
mentioned machinima, and that's the first one that popped in my head. So
yeah, it's been a thing for a while, and Bethesda games have lent themselves some of the best to it. You get you get machinima creators like Manslayer and stuff with his classic gamer poop. I don't know if you ever saw that, but there's some amazing stuff there where essentially you're able to program and control the characters to kind of do what you want as actors in your show. And Bethesda Game Studios games are some of the most programmable for that or accessible.
that's cool. Yeah. No, it's funny you said that because I didn't even think about it. But so I'm part of an RP group in Fallout 76, and we went out on a recon mission. And during that recon mission, our paladin, I don't know if he wants to say his name, but Anubis.
Your
Hey,
BOS
Anubis.
commander.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. He we're all crouched down, and he's like, "Hold on, I want to take a picture." And he took a picture of all of us in the mission, and I actually have that as a background on my computer, but I never even thought about it that way. And I'm like, you know what? That's like, I get it now.
It's like family photos at Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
I mean,
I didn't
they can be
connect, though.
mementos, and they can be, sometimes there's not necessarily an artistic aspect. It's just, hey, look at us. Hey, Ma, here we are. It's beautiful. And other times it can be very artistic. And obviously photo editing comes into it too. There are different categories with virtual photography where some people like to take it exactly raw from the game. Others like to edit, and that's fine. Now, as far as actually photoshopping, in other words, adding elements, removing elements that weren't there, or removing elements that were there, that is frowned upon more often. But those are edits; those are different.
Yeah.
But just color balancing, adjusting your contrast and lighting, that's totally fine and normal. And so there a huge thing that sprung up around it. It's really with the advent of photo mode in games, which has been a thing really for 4 or 5 years. Previously, you would on PC use third-party tools or have to unlock the console to be able to move the camera around.
Mm-hmm.
People have more and more been doing it. There's a huge community for it. Instagram helped. It's even bigger on Twitter. And then there are a number of organizations, VGP Unite. We mentioned the Photo Mode magazine. They're a great group that they've been doing a digital magazine now for 2 years. I was lucky enough to be featured in it once.
And that's the photo mode.
Yeah, the Photo Mode.
Yeah,
they're an e-magazine.
That's so cool. Yeah, no, I didn't even think about it when you were. I'm like virtual photography, and it's like this picture that I'm talking about actually has meaning to us because our paladin Silent actually died. Well, not like literally in the real world. I'm talking about in video game role playing world. His character died because his character was old and it was time to move on. Well, he killed that character off. Well, now we have that moment in time captured in that one picture because he was part of that RP group at the time. And it's nice to think of it that way. And it's like, oh, well,
It's important.
It's a moment, and I never really thought about it until you started talking about virtual photography. And it was like, that is so cool.
Yeah. And the difference is a lot of game developers have been promoting it and encouraging that virtual photography now because they realize that if there are specific things like moments you're talking about with people those are moments to speak to that group of people. But the games themselves have so many iconic moments. Meeting Paarthurnax in Skyrim, let's take that as a big example. Or emerging from Vault 101 in Fallout 3, okay? That they're encouraging people to share their virtual photography on social media, to hashtag it. Mothman Monday is a huge thing on Twitter, or was, a couple years ago, as you might remember. People see that, they identify with it, it keys into the game, and it becomes kind of it builds community. It's both promotion and community building. And so virtual photography, man, it's great, it's fun, and it's probably one of the bigger things I'm known for, even though, podcasting and stuff like that might be the thing that people think of first.
Well, I do because I'm in that world. But if I wasn't in that world, I mean, your photography would probably be the next thing coming if I was to find it because I had no idea. I never really thought about it. I think that's awesome. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show today, and I hope you enjoyed my guest's content, and I hope you check out all her work, especially her virtual photography. Go look it up, see if you can find it, and keep creating. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye. And thank you so much for having me, Jax. I appreciate it.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. No, I'm glad you came.
This podcast is part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, a program designed to help all podcasts reach their full potential. For information about joining the Robots Radio Rocket Club, check out robotsradio.net.